Hello, and welcome back to the State of Work podcast by Lano, a podcast in which we discuss the current and the future state of work and everything that is related to these topics. And today is a pretty special episode because we're going to be discussing what our cities and our actual CBDs and suburbs will look like with this new world of work that we live in. And for that topic, we have a very special guest on today, who's Arnaud Devigne. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Jobgether. And Arnaud has some pretty interesting thoughts and ideas around how remote work will be able to affect downtowns and central business districts all around the globe, and what companies and governments as well have to do to reinvent these spaces and make cities come to life again. Or maybe reimagine how we use cities as well. I also want to talk to him about company culture and how we can make sure that if we have a remote team for working from home a lot, or a hybrid setup, how we can still have company culture be an important part of a company's DNA. So without further ado, let's talk to Arnaud. All right. I see a lot of sunshine in the background, it looks like, or at least it looks very bright. Where are you joining us from today?
Well, actually, I'm a French guy, but I decided to move to a sunny place, indeed, which is Menorca Island in Baleares, Spain. So it's a beautiful location to work from.
Yeah, lovely. And you would get some really nice late summer weather there, I'm assuming. So I'm a bit jealous, but I'm not going to complain too much because we're just heading into spring in Melbourne as well. So not too jealous on that part. Well, cities and where we're living is exactly what we want to talk about today, because we have an expert on this topic, and not just remote work, but also how it affects lives of employees, but on of people in general and the cities that we live in. So today we want to explore how remote work affects cities and the people that live in these cities, not just the remote employees themselves. So how does it affect the world we live in?
Actually, we tend to only focus on people's well-being when we speak about remote work and work from home or work from anywhere, everywhere, which is a very important topic, of course. But we just start seeing some side effects on our lives, on our societies that are really, really massive. And one of them is definitely the impact on cities, on rural versus city zones, suburbs versus downtown. All the kind of setup is being totally reinvented with this major shift that goes from a world where we all used to work in an office in downtown to a world where we decide basically where we want to work from. So one of I'd say that there are two obvious high level consequences. The first one is that what we considered as a business district in town tend to disappear purely as business district. It doesn't mean that they will just become ghost parts of the city, but they will become hybrid. They will become totally different. So they have to reinvent themselves. And the second one is really the movement of population themselves. So because we kind of inherited from a world where you had to go where the machines were to produce things, and we replicated that actually to an economy of service. We did that for so many years, and now it's over. Now you can work from wherever you want, so you don't have to live close to the headquarters of your company. So we see a movement of people just relocating from the city centers to not only the suburbs, but to more remote zone, because they don't have to commute every day. So it's two major shifts in the end, two major changes.
Yeah, those are major impacts that it can have on cities. Do we have any examples yet, or can you think of any examples of cities that have adapted very well to this change, or maybe also an example where that's still very much a work in progress?
It's very much work in progress. We you see, this shift has only accelerated with COVID 2 years ago. I'm not saying that there was no like weak signals before, because the kind of move from desire to get closer to nature, to have more space, etc., was already here before COVID. But COVID made it clear that it was just vital, it was just critical for human beings to get closer to nature, to have a nicer environment where you could live and work. And it also proved that we could do it, that it was technically feasible, and that it was not going against productivity, against efficiency of the business. So this is why it really accelerated those past 2 years. And now we are entering in a world where basically everyone can, not everyone, but let's say white collars, most white collars who have just a laptop as a production tool in the end, and decide where they live and where they work, basically. And they can align that. Before that time, you basically chose a career, a job, and then you had to adapt your lifestyle, basically, to that job.
Yeah.
And it's the other way around. First, say, okay, I feel that I'm getting energized from being close to the sea. This is my case. I need to live in a place where I can see the horizon and be close to the sea. And then I can find a job that is compatible, that is aligned with the way I want to live. 5 years ago, it was just totally impossible, because most of the places you wanted to live had no local jobs to offer that were aligned with your skills, with maybe your expectations, the career you wanted to have. Now it became possible.
Yeah.
Some cities, we have some examples of cities who are already embracing, or not only cities, but also countries or bigger regions are already embracing this shift and supporting it. You may have heard of some national campaigns from countries like Croatia, for instance, like Croatia in Europe, which is a nice country to live in, made a big advertising campaign to attract digital nomads, remote talent, and they see it as an opportunity, to boost their economy and to become less dependent as well on mass tourism, which is not as healthy as having remote workers in your country who create a lot of activity for the local economy. So Croatia is a good example, but I live in Spain, and there are very good example in Spain as well, in Canarias, Islas Canarias, for example, like Tenerife, are very as well proactive at inviting, welcoming, and promoting remote work on their islands, because they see it again as an opportunity to move away from a non-sustainable economy dependent on mass tourism to an economy that will become all year round, dependent on remote workers, which have a much healthier consumption pattern and habits, in terms of interacting with local people, etc. It provides much more value to the ecosystem, definitely.
Yeah. I might just get you to close whatever chat system you have on in the background, because the noise pops through a couple of times. I'll be able to filter it out for the time being.
I close the Google chat, and then I realize there's one more that is still open.
Yeah, that's usually what happens to me. I just realize it with the noise.
I have probably 6 of them in parallel on the system, and you always forget one, so it should be fun. Yeah,
awesome, thank you.
We can do it again if you want, because it's true.
That's fine. No, the ones, it's not too bad. I can filter that out probably. I was just thinking I'll create more work for myself. The more it pops up, that's fine. Speaking of cities that are good at adapting, I might have a little anecdote from my own experience. You can be the judge whether or not that's a good example. But I live in Melbourne, and Melbourne is one of those cities that actually has a central business district, the CBD, which was very much dead during COVID, because, all the businesses that are there are kind of relying on the people that work in the city to come and give them business. I'm talking about restaurants and cafes and shops and that kind of stuff. And the government actually did a big campaign to kind of try to get people back into the CBD and offering discounts, and you'll get your money back if you come into the city, like, you know, after hours, so not just for business lunches. I think a lot of people have taken to that, but obviously that's not a long-term solution. So what are other things that people or that cities could do to breach this little gap that's happening, that's opening up from, you know, they won't be getting the business from the people working around anymore, but there's still opportunity there, like the example that you mentioned, attracting remote talent, maybe even thinking about opening up co-working spaces or more catering to this new workforce that is emerging. Do you have any ideas of what cities could do?
Yeah, exactly like the example you mentioned, Melbourne. Let's say we have a similar one, probably like very famous in Paris, where I used to work when I was younger, actually, which is kind now seen as hell, which is, you know. So imagine, so it's a business district that is not even in the city. It's outside Paris. It is only like skyscrapers, towers.
Yeah.
There is only artificial life in it, you know, restaurants that were built, designed only to provide lunch for people who are working there. And then at 6 p.m., everything is dead. Everything shuts down, and it becomes like really a ghost town. So this is the example of CBDs that are like really struggling to reinvent themselves, because everything was designed for just one purpose. People work, then take a break. There was one Irish pub, let's say, so people can get a beer for the, at 5 p.m. And that was it. So now this summer, research shows that those CBDs only had 40% of occupancy. So we are not back to normal at all. We are. It will last. It was not just COVID time, and now people will not get back to the office massively. Most people are either like full remote workers or work from home 2, 3, 4 days a week. So those cities that were like massively like adapted to being full of workers during the day are kind of half empty all the time. So it is a deeper transformation that they need. It's not just giving coupons for people to come and buy from the shop. As you mentioned, will not be enough to attract them. So the first thing you mentioned, which is of course one of the main levers, is to turn those office spaces that are not needed anymore into like hybrid co-working, co-living spaces. And you have lots of now you have lots of remote workers who also move from one region to the other that cannot really or do not want to live in a standard apartment or house because they don't want to feel isolated. They want to be closer to kind of a community. And there is a great opportunity to open co-living along with co-working spaces in this district. And then it will make it possible to bring life again to those like neighborhoods, but life that is like, I would say, sustainable from an economic perspective, which is just not 9 to 5, but people who will work there a few hours a day from a cafe, from a co-working, then will work from their co-living or room or whatever. And then in the evening, they will go to the restaurant as well. They will not have to commute to get back to a city center, etc. So it can be, those business districts may have the opportunity to turn into more hybrid areas. Just as, you know, you may have heard of remote villas. The idea is a concept of remote villas, remote cities that are kind of popping up in some, it can be in distant neighborhoods from downtown, like in the remote suburbs. There are kind of cities where you can get access to anything, basically, less than 15 minutes walk. That's kind of the idea. So you can go to restaurant, shopping, you can have co-living, co-working, etc. They are mainly targeting remote workers, and they provide them with all the services they need. So those business districts can take the example of Remoteville to reinvent themselves. But it's going to be a huge challenge also because they were not designed to be nice to live, You see what I mean in terms of just the way they were built, they were designed to be efficient and just to spend the day. Is it, even if all services get back to La Défense and you can live there 24 hours a day, is it really what remote workers want to spend their life, It's still very, very gray, very dark and gloomy in the winter at night, So there's no tree, there's no nature, etc. So it is usually one of the main drivers for people to go remote. They want to get back to more nature, to more space, etc. So it means that we need to make huge investments to turn those neighborhoods into nicer places to live and not just to work. You need to have parks, maybe kindergartens, you need to have everything for families as well, which is not the case today.
Yeah. So kind of turning central business districts into remote business districts.
Yes, exactly. That's definitely a way to go. And it really requires some massive investment in construction as well. And maybe destruction, maybe get rid from the less friendly towers in the oldest one where no one will want to go, and replace them with nice parks, and that's probably the way to go. So it will take years and years, and there is a risk that some of them will not manage their transformation, I think, and will become ghost neighborhoods. This will happen for sure, because especially we are entering in a period of instability from an economic perspective. Access to credit investment is more difficult. So will all the cities be rich enough, to manage this transition? I'm not sure. I think some of them will probably go through very difficult times, and also the businesses that are there, the restaurants and all the shops there, they will probably suffer. Some of them may shut down, and that's the opportunity for them, to open somewhere else where you have new clusters of people with purchasing power, with good, you have lots of talents who are ready to spend their money, and it may be 30, 50 kilometers away from where they were based initially. So there's also lots of opportunities being created. And it's kind of the revenge of the tier 2 cities, It's very interesting what's happening in terms of the center of gravity, that went probably too far to downtown, like downtown those past 20, 30 years. And now it's kind of the revenge of those cities that so everyone living that became ghost cities 30, 40 years ago. There is an example in the US, Tesla in Oklahoma, I think. Tesla, Oklahoma, 500,000 inhabitants, second city in Oklahoma, but still not. We're not talking about San Francisco, New York. Those cities were probably kind of very lagging behind in terms of economic growth. And now they see remote as an opportunity to totally reinvent themselves, invested in a program to attract remote talents. And those cities that were a bit abundant see this reshuffle as a big opportunity to merge again. And if you have a look at Europe, it's the same, in countries like France, or England are very good examples of hyper-centralized countries where London, Paris, everything is supposed to take place. And there was like really not much happening in second or third tier cities with 50,000 inhabitants, 100,000 inhabitants, etc. Now, now they become attractive again for talents who can work remotely. They just have to create the right programs to facilitate relocation of talents, to make sure that they offer the right level of service. It starts with good internet connection, of course, but it goes beyond that, because there's co-living spaces like easy access to nature, to parks, having the right, schools,
infrastructure, and I guess transport, connectivity to other places,
paths, things like that. Activities, outdoor activities, indoor activities, like leisure, etc., and culture, of course, which was usually a pain point because those cities were usually dependent on the big ones in terms of culture, in terms of activities like that, and some of them invested those past years on this cultural dimension, etc. So they need to, probably to put some money on the table and to be creative as well to diversify their offer to citizens.
Yeah, we talked about this growing remote workforce and that the power is kind of shifting into their direction slowly but surely. That also comes with some negative aspects. There's not just positives, as it always is. There's always two sides to the story. What are some of the potentially negative side effects that this major shift to remote work on such a big global scale can have on cities?
Yeah, definitely. We cannot paint it as just a positive trend. It's mainly positive, but some industries, some players will struggle, and there will be like side effects. The first one is really the players, the companies that are relying on those on this kind of commuting world, where talents were basically taking the train 1 hour every morning and 1 hour every afternoon. So these, like the most obvious one, is a public transport company who saw a massive decline in their usage and revenue. So basically, it depends on countries and locations, but more or less like half of commuting, like more than 1 hour commuting, has disappeared, and it's been replaced by some people taking the train for 2-3 hours, but only once a week, to go and spend one day at the headquarters at the office and spend the rest of the week in their village, in the countryside, or in a smaller city with their families and where they have their new life, basically. So it's big, and it's hard, of course, for such companies who are relying transportation companies to reinvent themselves, because they have infrastructures, and there are like railways, etc. You cannot move that. You cannot be flexible overnight to change that. So that's the most obvious one. Then we mentioned as well all the economy of CBDs that were only relying on workers during the day. All those restaurants, who are closed in the evening and only work at lunchtime, they cannot operate the same way, or they're going to disappear. So they can reinvent themselves. If the district becomes more like hybrid in terms of usage, they can start opening during the evening. They can get connected to some food delivery platforms, and they can broaden, their market in a way, and not just be dependent on the people who are physically at the place where they're based. So they can reinvent themselves. Then we see also some negative effects on real estate, on prices. We were in a world where basically most big cities downtown were extremely expensive, and the suburbs, most cities, the suburbs were cheaper, and people could get like a nice home in a suburb for a decent price. Well, except some very like posh neighborhoods, some cities, etc. But it was more or less the trend. And now it's a bit the other way around, where you see the prices in downtown tend to be flat now in most big cities in the world. And they have moved like plus 5% over the past 2-3 years. Whereas prices in suburbs, in nice suburbs with nature, etc., have totally like skyrocketed, plus 30-40%, or even doubled in some areas. And of course, this trend is an issue because there is a demand, there is a movement, etc. But the demand is so sudden, so it was so fast, this change of expectation from workers, because finally they could work where they wanted to live, basically. But it created a huge demand, and prices of real estate become a problem for sure. So this is kind of some negative aspects we can see. Of course, we mentioned was kind of more like economic aspects, but there are also some more psychological aspects. For most workers, it means also to have less density of relationships, because the beauty, of course, of the hyper-centralized work model, etc., is that you create a network of friends at your company's, office. Then you go. Everyone goes to the same pubs, bars after work, etc. You create like a nice multicultural mix, and it's kind of interesting as well, And now you have like people who may live in sort of bubbles. So it will be a fragmentation of the spaces, and we will recreate like very integrated bubbles with all the services everywhere in the territory. And there is a risk, of course, that we become more and more dependent of this small bubble, and we don't open up to like different kind of people who bring like different perspective, different experiences, etc. So that's always a risk, of recreating communities. Actually, we're about to see this movement of moving from massified cities to the rise of micro hyper local communities, and there is a psychological risk of that. You tend to live in a closed environment, so it's far too early to measure that, but it's something that we definitely have to be careful about, and probably having like some very I'm a big advocate, of not being all the way like full speed to just one model that is very extreme. And so probably sometimes you need to escape your bubble. My case is a good example. I live on an island, and it's probably one of the small islands of Mediterranean Sea, Menorca. In the winter, can tell you that you have the feeling you're part of a community. If you take your car, you go somewhere, everyone will see you, and the day after you'll have some people say, I know yesterday at 7 p.m. you went to the grocery because I saw your car, And when you come from, I spent all my life in Paris, when you come from a city where you're anonymous, then you understand as well the risk and the impact of living in this kind of bubbles. Where everyone knows each other, etc. Sometimes it has a beauty as well. It has some positive aspect as well, the kind of anonymous life in a big city where you meet new people every day, etc. So you need to escape. So in my case, I need to yeah, I know that time to time I need to go out of the island and
Yeah.
to feel to feel the big city, you know, and the excitement of being
Yeah.
of becoming anonymous again.
Yeah. It sounds like the solution here would be to try to be as flexible and as open as possible in this new evolving state of work that we're in. Is that something that you with your company Jobgether do to help people with and support people with?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, the purpose of Jobgether is to make it possible for every talent in the world to find a job that is aligned with his lifestyle, basically.
Yeah.
So we did lots of research and realized that people who understood the value of remote and flexible work in general, because remote is by far the most important dimension of flexibility, but it's not only remote, it's also flexible hours, unlimited PTO, ability to work, you know, whenever you want, wherever you want, and with the work conditions you decide, which can be combining two jobs, which can be being a freelancer if you don't want to be an employee, etc. So this
Yeah.
flexibility. So many people realize the power, the potential of this new possibility, but they cannot get access to those opportunities, to the jobs, just because the whole like job ecosystem has been designed for a world where the location was the most important and not the location of the individual, the location of the company. So you go to a job site, you have to search, okay, which job, where, the city, you know, and the city where the company is based, and everything was designed that way. So we decided to offer the first job search engine where talents could find all the remote jobs in one click and have all the details of the flex conditions for each job. Because second thing we realize is that, you know, you will see very often some job listings, job offers mentioning just work like remote possible, you know, remote friendly, remote compatible, and period, you know, no more details. Okay, what does it mean? You know, from one company to the other, from one manager to the other. Being remote friendly can have lots of different meanings.
Yeah.
It can go from you can work from home one day a week, and but you have to be connected nonstop, online nonstop, and it just as if you're in the open space, you know. To you can be a digital nomad and basically do your life. We don't care. We work in the world, you know. We are flexible in terms of contracting. We work with some platforms like Oyster Deal to make you to change your contract if you change location, etc. So it can go from nothing to being like extremely flexible. So at Jobgether, we built the company as a remote company, as we say, like fully flexible. We have talents all over the world, and they have the possibility to relocate, like just like this. And we are totally flexible, and we see lots of people now, more than 70% now of talents who want this level of flexibility, you know, but they cannot find it online. It's very fragmented. You know, the offers are very fragmented. And as you mentioned before, the level of detail information is not clear. It's not enough on the job listing. So we aggregate all the jobs. We put them on one platform, you know, all the flexible remote jobs. And we add all the missing information. So we go with a mix of machine learning and human work as well. We're going to find the missing pieces, the missing information, to make sure that the flex condition, the remote policy is extremely clear in the job description, and that when someone wants a job that is fully remote all over Europe, so it can travel between countries, Europe, etc., we will only show the jobs that like match the criteria, you know. So this is a lot of effort, work, etc. But then we facilitate the life of people who understood the value of remote. This is our reason for operating the service. And we believe there's lots of positive impact doing so. We do it because we think it goes into the right direction from a let's say society perspective. The most obvious reason is really mental health. It's fascinating because we are in a world where we thought that we were moving in the right direction in terms of work conditions, etc. But at the same time, we've never seen so many people suffering from work conditions. So those past years, and of course, COVID was a terrible catalyst for mental disease, from pain at work and burnout, brownout, call them however you want. Lots of different, situations where people suffer at work. And of course, remote and flexibility in general makes it possible to reduce this level of stress, level of pain at work. You can work in a way that is much more aligned, compatible with your family constraints. Take the example of single parents, just single parents, the kind of logistics nightmare it is when you have rigid work conditions. You have to be at the office sharp at 9. You have to commute 1 hour. But then, the commuting time is not compatible with the time you have to drop your kids at school. So you're going to need a babysitter, etc. It's just with remote flexibility, you can really avoid lots of those conditions of additional stress, because in the end, we're talking about additional stress and mental health risks. So this is the main dimension. The second one is, which is obvious as well, is the impact on carbon footprint just by suppressing commuting, So commuting is an accident of history, as I always say. We didn't realize that we don't have to go to a place where the machines are to produce some very still industry. Industry still exists, but industry is now accounts for the minority of the jobs, and 60, 70, 80% of the workforce don't need to be close to any factory, any plant, etc. They just have their laptops and they can. And still, we've been doing for the past 10, 15 years, like commuting 2 hours to 3 hours a day, which is not so unusual for people who live in London or Paris to commute 3 hours a day. This is 3 hours of life that you lose every day, more or less, of your life. That you can really value and decide what you do. And it was people mostly in their cars, this is, and so we have a positive impact as well on carbon footprint by just getting rid of all this useless commuting time, and especially with cars. And then we think the biggest impact in the end, but it's going to be long term, it's going to take years, but it will have a major impact, that rebalancing as well. The level of the standard of living, between rich, poor countries, because you will now have access to the best jobs in the world, no matter where you live, no matter where you were born, no matter where you come from. So
that's a good segue into my last question, which is, what does the future look like? You've already described that there's, in your opinion, not just one way, not one truth of 100% remote for everyone. There's still people that enjoy going to the office. There's positive aspects about the socialness that you mentioned as well, and there's lots of different meanings behind the word remote and hybrid models and so forth. So what will the future, in your opinion, obviously we can't look into a crystal ball and know what it's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. But, if you could create a little wish list, what will cities look like in the future?
Yeah, first of all, as you mentioned, not everyone's going to go full remote, and research, the consensus right now is that probably 25%, 22 to 25% of jobs will be full remote in 2025, in the next 2-3 years, basically. So we are still talking about 75% of workers will have like a sort of hybrid model. So we are just moving away from there is one way to work. We are moving away from this pattern that was inherited from industrial age and to something that is much more diversified in terms of ways of combining workplace and place where you live, etc. So one thing is sure is that flexibility will grow. Flexibility will be for everyone. It doesn't mean that full remote will be for everyone, but more flexibility will become the standard. So the kind of 9 to 5 every day, the same place, etc., will probably totally disappear. I don't see many companies imposing that to their employees in 5 years if it's not a technical necessity, if it's not because you have to be at a place where there is let's say, you have a laboratory, you have some infrastructure that require people to come. Yeah. Otherwise, you will not impose that. But then, see, the hybridation of the cities will make it possible to have a spectrum of possibilities where everyone can basically decide the way he wants to organize his we can say lifestyle and work style, is work style in a way. How I feel more productive, more comfortable to work. So I see like you will have some people who will decide to live 30 minutes away from from downtown because they want to be closer to nature. They will be okay to commute to the city because they still want to engage with other people. They don't want to live in a bubble, as we mentioned. So they will probably take the train once or twice a week to a co-working space, in the city center. And then the rest of the time they will stay around. It doesn't mean they will spend 3 days a week working from home. They will go away. They will go to some cafes. Maybe they will join colleagues or friends who do not work far, and they will create together sort of mini hyper-local co-working collective. It's popping up everywhere right now in all over Europe. In French, we call it a collective. It's a group of people who basically want to share some infrastructure, some facilities, and just have social interactions at a local level. And we'll have this kind of collective popping up, and it will not be like a rigid community. You belong to one, and you cannot, escape. Yeah, people will be like will join many tribes in the end. We can talk about tribes, and you don't belong to just one. You can join a group one day, then you will join another, etc. Then comes a very big question, which is what about the corporate culture, the culture of the company? Can the company still impose a culture in such an environment where everything is so fragmented, where people have freedom and it's a big challenge for managers. And this is one of the main reasons right now why many managers don't want to give so much flexibility to employees. And they try, all this movement, let's get back to the office, etc. The main reason is pushed, is culture. We're going to lose our culture, And people tend to think that culture is something you can impose top down, It's not the way it works. This is fake. This is just bullshit. It's pretending we have a culture because we do a pizza party. I shared an interesting article in Fortune yesterday. It was about people are pushing hard to do. Hey guys, we have some free pizzas and free snacks or whatever. Come back to the office. This is very artificial. It will not make people come back to the office if you push them with this kind of tiny material incentive. So the culture can be a culture of mixing as well, the different different experiences, etc. It doesn't have to be so rigid, the top-down perspective. So is the kind extremely strong culture, corporate culture dead? Honestly, this is a question I have. I'm not sure today a company, let's say L'Oreal, which is probably one of the companies in the world with the strongest culture, corporate culture, very, they have a culture. They share lots of things, and you have to be like that when you work at L'Oreal. If they were a startup today and they were growing in the coming years, I'm not sure they would be able to create this kind of model where the culture is so monolithic and so top down in the end. So I believe in companies tomorrow where everything will be more blurred in terms of culture. So is it the same? We enter the world where everything is blurred. Everything is a gray zone. Private life, work life. Everything is a continuum. It's not binary. It's not. You don't have like separation, and there's a risk involved. It's just like you don't have any more. It's very hard to maintain some full disconnection. When you work remotely, when you move from one place to the other, you want to work from a cafe. So you're enjoying your cafe, etc. And still your laptop is open, you work, you receive notification on your smartphone, etc. So it's a very blurred work. And the cities will just reflect the end of this binary world with a clear separation between work and private life, family life. So the cities become blurred as well, where neighborhoods, a good example in San Francisco, and it's not, it started much before COVID, was, Soma district, for instance. So Soma market in San Francisco was much before this kind of movement and remote work. It was already a very hybrid district where you have some people who live there. It's kind of trendy, etc. You have very, very vibrant cultural life, nightlife, and you have also so many tech companies, businesses who took over the warehouses because it was like decent price a long time ago. And they create some offices in those warehouses, and now it's going to become more social life, places, co-working places. So these are good examples of neighborhoods that got reinvented before remote work became the standard.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure there's plenty more that we could talk about and that we will have to talk about in the future, because this is developing and evolving as we speak. I want to thank you for taking the time to discuss this with us and to shed some light on the developments that you've experienced and that we can all see around us. And I'm sure there's so much more to explore here that we might have to have a little update call and maybe even discuss that topic of changing company cultures, and do we still need company cultures, and is it maybe more important to build remote cultures? So we'll definitely be back.
Really enjoyed the discussion, and very happy to be back and discuss all the other impacts of remote and flexibility. So many, and we have to stay very humble, because actually we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the coming years. We just see some things that were obvious because we thought it's always been working like that. It's always been like that. That these models are disappearing very fast. But are we going to have lots of different models coexisting, or are we going to have like one becoming the predominant one? That's very hard to tell today.
It's hard to tell, but we'll definitely keep our eyes on it, because we're all living and experiencing it. So fascinating times to be in. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Speak soon. Bye-bye.
The State of Work is a podcast by Lano. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss a new episode, or find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram or Twitter by searching for The State of Work. For more information about today's topic and our show notes, as well as all of our previous episodes, check out our website at lano.io/podcast. Thanks for listening, and until next time on The State of Work.